EMR, Computerized Provider Order Entry, Prescriptions Module Overview. An essential part of any medical practice, of course, is that of writing prescriptions. And there are going to be several videos here on the Resource Center that cover this module. In this video, we're going to touch on the default behaviors which you can define based on local preference as to how your prescription screen will auto-populate in certain circumstances. Then we're going to take a look at the user interface as far as the screen layout, field definitions, and your workflow navigation. There are prescription level and drug level details. Our prescription module includes the first data bank National Drug Library as its standard search. This includes name brand and generic equivalents. In addition, Prognosis provides you various search options such as by name, locally preferred lists, or custom order sets by therapeutic class of the medication, and in-house pharmacy. The prescription module in Prognosis also includes integrated meaningful use functionality, such as drug formulary and eligibility checking, drug-drug and allergy interaction validation, as well as e-prescribing. In addition, there are other interactive features at the prescription level, such as accessing past prescription history, nationwide medication history of the patient, as well as designing a custom patient medical history template. Also embedded is a national analytics tool. And finally, we will look at the methods of delivery of the prescription to the patient, which includes printing hard copies. In certain circumstances, you may also be able to fax the prescription, as well as e-prescribing. So I'm going to toggle into Prognosis and take a look at the prescription screen of an open encounter. Now, as a disclaimer here before I get started, we're not going to look at the specific configuration settings. However, there are numerous properties that you can define locally that controls how the prescription screen pre-populates. So that is something that you can discuss with your implementation manager or through our technical support team if you would like to have more information on that. But we're going to just take a look at now the layout of the screen and the basic navigation of filling out the prescription screen. And we do have separate videos for actually creating prescriptions and the interaction of the different features that we're going to highlight here. So starting in the upper left, we have an analytics icon. The analytics opens up what's called the prescription helper. This gives the provider an opportunity to analyze, based on diagnoses, the medications that are being prescribed. Now, if we follow our eyes across the screen there in that prescription ribbon, we've also got our action icons. So these first two go together. The preview and the print is with regards to your hard copy. You can fax the prescription if applicable, and then e-prescribing. And the question mark, of course, opens up our prescription screen help. Now, just below that ribbon, we have our prescription type bar. And this is where you identify the prescription as being in-house, meaning you're going to dispense it from your internal pharmacy, if it is sample drugs that you're giving your patient, or if it is a prescription that you're going to be sending to a pharmacy. And then that brings us here to the different options of populating our pharmacy. First of all, we have the preferred pharmacy button, and you'll notice here in the case of Jack's, there's a check mark on the label. That indicates that the patient has one or more preferred pharmacies. So when we click that button, it opens up the preferred pharmacy window, defaulting to patient preferred. Notice in the upper left, we've also got a clinic preferred icon. The clinic preferred also can be entered through the autocomplete field simply by typing in the field if you don't want to use your mouse. And then we've also got the binocular, which opens up the nationwide database of pharmacies as provided through SureScript. And this, of course, can be filtered by state, city, whether or not the pharmacy takes e-prescriptions, retail, mail order, etc. If we continue to the right, we have prescription level details. There are a couple of properties in the system that you can define to either be always selected by default or always deselected by default. For instance, to always allow substitution or to keep the drug long-term on the patient's current medication. You've also got fill date, diagnosis, number of units, and valid up to. Perhaps you have a patient who's going to be going out of town and needs to have a prescription available while traveling. This allows you to predate as well as expire a prescription to ensure you continue to control the number of pills the patient has at any given time. To the left of this, then, we have our individual dispensable drug details data entry. Now, as we're going to see when we start creating a prescription, you can create a prescription one drug at a time through this dispensable drug detail section, or down here across the bottom at the prescription level table, there are various search options to multiple select drugs, as opposed to doing them one at a time. But just briefly looking at the field definitions, we've got the name of the drug. This is an autocomplete field. So if you just want to start typing in the name, and if you'll notice, some of these are lowercase, some are capitalized. The capital letters indicate brand name. Now what we're accessing here is not a prognosis table, but rather the National Drug Database provided by First Data. We do not have control over the contents of this database. It is updated monthly, automatically, and it includes the drugs that are actively being manufactured. So once you've selected your drug name, the strength will pre-populate with all of the available strengths currently available. Now the system has a property that you can define if you would like to view inactive drugs along with active drugs. Manufacturing may cease on a drug. However, the pharmacy may continue to stock it. We see that here in the second case of the 750 milligram. If you notice that there is an asterisk in the name, that asterisk indicates that particular dosage has been inactive. So you can still prescribe it because it is a valid drug and your pharmacy may have it in stock. But since manufacturing has been ceased, eventually that will no longer show in your list. Now, if you don't want to see inactives to begin with, you can simply just disable them at that property level. Next, we have our dosage, both number as well as type. Even though your strength may indicate tablet or capsule, you still need to explicitly define it here for e-prescribing requirements. Next, we have our frequency. Now, the frequency in my training environment is defaulting to not applicable. You can decide what value you want to default. You can also define this list as to the frequency values, and you can decide based on a system property if you want it by name or by abbreviation. For instance, mine is by abbreviation, so I'm just going to choose the BID. Now, incidentally, all of these fields that I just covered, the drug name, strength, dosage, and frequency, they are autocomplete fields, meaning you can click the icon and search using your scroll bar to choose the value, or you can type with your keyboard and it will start selecting where you stop typing. Also, as I'm moving through these fields left to right, if you notice down here in my fourth line, the direction is building. Now, after my frequency, I have the PRN, which is another flag you can set at a system level to always be selected or not. If I deselect that and you keep your eye on that direction, you'll notice that my SIG changes to simply giving me the frequency. But if I select it again, it adds the PRN. If I go ahead then and specify the number of days, you'll notice it automatically calculates my bulk dispense. And then I can indicate my number of refills. Now, when I'm entering the drug this way, at an individual drug level, if there's only the one drug on that prescription, I can simply save it. However, if I'm going to enter more than one drug on that one prescription, I need to click the update button over here on the right, and that is going to update my drug down to the prescription level. And notice when I did that, not only did it populate my Vicodin, but it advanced my cursor to a blank line so that I can immediately start adding my second drug. As we mentioned, our direction is automatically calculating based on the values we enter left to right. Now, when I get to the very end, if I've decided I would like to add a custom note to the direction, since that is a special instruction that I want to be included on the label, I can add that before I update my drug, and it will save it. However, if I realize all of a sudden, you know what, I don't want it BID, I want it QD. Notice my custom note was lost because every time you update a value left to right, the system tries to recalculate it. So if you are going to enter custom notes, do it at the very end before updating. Now, you'll notice underneath the direction, we have a reason and pharmacy notes. These are optional fields if you would like to specify a reason for the prescription or any special notes to your pharmacist. As you see here, do not enter directions. These are not the notes to go on the label for the patient. These are notes you want to give the pharmacist specifically. Now to the right of pharmacy notes, we'll notice we have an eligibility button, and then in between the dispensable drug details and the prescription level details, we have a formulary status band. Now these features are discussed in a separate training video, but as regards the eligibility button, notice here that it's displaying in a red label. That means eligibility has not been found. So if you click the button, it is going to give you an error as to why it was not found. You can then take the appropriate action and retry the eligibility. Once you have managed to verify eligibility, the label of that button will change from red to white and will display a check mark. Regarding the drug formulary, the status will be displayed here on the outer screen, but to view the details of the prescription coverage and the specific formularies, you need to click the ellipsis icon. Now down here in our prescription level detail, we've also got these search options. These search icons give you different ways of searching the first data bank library, which up here at the top we could only type by name, but it also allows you to do multi-select. So if you want to prescribe more than one drug at a time, it is sometimes more convenient to do it down here as opposed to doing it one at a time. That is based on workflow, of course. Now the first icon here, the plus sign, is our standard search. Now it initially defaults to preferred drugs. You can have clinic level preferred drugs or physician level preferred drugs based on your configuration setup. If you do not have it defined on a preferred list, this middle icon switches to the first data bank library. So this gives you all drugs, name brand and generic. And again, if you have chosen to view the inactive, here they will show with the status inactive instead of the asterisk in the name that we saw in our autocomplete list. And the third option here is order sets. If there are local drug regimens, for instance, where you always prescribe based on certain scenarios the same drugs over and over again, as opposed to individually prescribing 4 or 5 drugs, you can create it as a bundled order set. Choose one entry here and it will prescribe all of the individual drugs at the individual dosages you've specified. The C icon allows you to do a search by therapeutic class. So if you prefer searching for a drug by the class as opposed to the name, you have that option. And then the I button goes along with this dispense button down here at the bottom, and this would be for in-house drugs. As opposed to writing an external prescription, this of course is handled in a separate video which addresses the setup required as well as the workflow. Then rounding out our prescription screen down here at the bottom, in the lower left, we will see our drug allergies based on what was entered from the patient's face sheet. Then we have these functional buttons, the past prescription, which opens up the patient's current medication screen, but displayed, as you see here in the upper left, the past prescriptions only, in case you want to review what prescriptions you've already written recently. Also, notice here on the left, we have the plus RX column. If the patient is simply coming in for a refill of one of those drugs and it was eligible, you could click that option. And then that would populate your prescription with one click so that you don't have to go through the searches or the autocomplete data entry. Now in that drop down, you can change it to view current medications or stopped medications. We've also got the PMH button. This opens a custom template to your liking. By default here, I'm showing you my patient's problem list on the face sheet, but you can basically customize this for whatever information you would like to have at a glance when you're writing a patient's prescription. And then we have our medication history. This goes a little beyond your prescription history in that the medication history is nationwide. For any pharmacy benefit manager that is reporting to SureScript, you can view, regardless of who the prescribing doctor was, to see what that patient's medications are in case they were not entirely honest in their disclosure or may have forgotten something, or if they're a drug seeker and you can anticipate drug abuse by looking at this medication history. Now this does require patient consent, which can be obtained at the point of patient register or here at the prescription level. And then finally down here at the bottom we have our completion actions. Now I just want to draw your attention to the drug detail table here in my third column labeled type. You'll notice that some of them are missing and some of them have a value, such as ERX and in-house. The value in the type column is going to be directly related to the combination of the drug and the pharmacy. For instance, right now I have my Vicodin selected. If we look at our pharmacy, to the left of my pharmacy, I do have the EPCS label. And since Vicodin is a Schedule II drug, it is eligible to go electronically. However, in my training environment, I do not have Dr. Cooper enabled for EPCS. If I did, instead of having a blank value here, it would have either signed or unsigned. That is explained in more detail in the EPCS video. Now for my amoxicillin, my drug type says ERX. If I look up here to my pharmacy, to the left of the CVS, it does have the ERX label. That is an example where both the drug and the pharmacy are compatible for e-prescribing. My third option here, lisinopril, notice the type says in-house. So at the top, instead of a pharmacy, I have my in-house option selected. And at the bottom, you'll notice I have the dispense button. And then my last example of the Advocor, the type is blank. But if I notice in my drug detail, it is not a scheduled controlled substance. The reason this does not say ERX like my amoxicillin does is because I have not chosen a pharmacy at all. So even though the drug is capable of going electronically, unless I have an ERX-enabled pharmacy, I'm not going to be able to transmit it. So once I am ready now to complete my prescription, when I look up here to my action buttons as to whether I want to print, fax, or e-prescribe it, that is directly related to the drug type. When there are multiple types, as we see in this example, ERX is going to take the top priority. Now you can always individually select or deselect these icons and then click the action that goes with each one. Or in my example, since I have them all selected, if I try to print first, notice I get an error that I cannot print the ERX drug, and that is because ERX takes priority. So if I click my ERX icon, it does bring up my ERX summary so that I can confirm the drug I'm about to send, and then I can click the send button. And notice I get the confirmation that the ERX is sent successfully, accepted, and pending by SureScript. And notice now my amoxicillin has a check mark beside the name. The ERX in red indicates that that completed prescription went ERX. And now my select type is removed because I've completed it. Now that leaves my Vicodin, the lisinopril, and the Advocor, which I can now print. So if I click my printer icon, it initially launches the preview of my default template and allows me to print it directly to my printer. And again, now I have a check mark in front of my drugs because I have printed the prescription. And my selection box is gone. Now notice in that scenario, even my in-house printed on that prescription. I went ahead and included my in-house drug on my prescription because we are going to discuss dispensing in-house drugs in a separate video. So in review of the prescription module within Prognosis, we discussed that there are local settings applicable for the default screen behavior. We will actually see that demonstrated in our creating prescription videos. As regards this video, we looked at the prescription screen user interface. There are prescription level as well as drug level details and fields. Embedded within the Prognosis prescription module is the first databank, National Drug Library, as well as local search options. We do include in-house pharmacy support. The prescription module does have numerous integrated features and functionality, including meaningful use requirements, local prescription history, custom patient medical history templates, as well as national medication history and analytics. When it comes to completing the prescription, we saw how the drug type and pharmacy combination determines whether it is going to be printed to a hard copy, faxed, or e-prescribed to the pharmacy. With regards to printing a physical prescription, Prognosis does support custom as well as pre-printed templates. And as mentioned, there are numerous other videos within this prescription module to review here on the Resource Center.